There's a moment right before the words hit. A second so small you might miss it. Your chest tightens, your breath hesitates, your heart seems to step aside. And suddenly, silence. Not outside, but within. You don't shout back, you don't defend yourself, you freeze. And in that freeze, something deeper begins to break. What if I told you that this pause, this inner silence is not peace? What if I told you that in the moment you lock up to protect yourself, your frequency fractures without you even noticing? Karl Pribram, one of the most profound minds to ever explore the nature of consciousness, once said that the brain does not merely store memories like files. It reconstructs reality. Every experience, every trauma, every word that shook you, it doesn't just live in your past. It's reprojected again and again like a hologram. Your present becomes a canvas for your most painful frequencies, unless you become conscious of them. And that freeze, when someone attacks you with words, when you shrink, when you disappear inside your own body, it's not just fear, it's a loop, a holographic projection of a pain you haven't yet met with love. You might think, I'm just trying to stay calm. You might believe, if I don't respond, I'm being mature. But what if silence is not strength when it comes from dissociation? What if that pause is actually the echo of an old wound, one that is shaping the energy you emit into the field around you? Joe Dispenza calls this the survival state, the place where your body remembers danger more than possibility, where your nervous system is no longer creating your future, but protecting your past. And when you're there, frozen, not because you chose peace, but because your body didn't feel safe, you stop creating. You stop flowing. You stop vibrating in alignment with who you truly are. You're not broken for freezing. You're not wrong for shutting down. But you need to understand what's really happening, because your reality is not responding to what you say you want. It's responding to what you vibrate when no one is watching. So ask yourself, when you freeze, when you shrink, when your voice disappears, what version of yourself is your brain reconstructing in that moment? That moment isn't small. That moment is everything. There's something no one ever taught us about silence. We were told silence is strength, that it's noble to walk away, to hold back, to stay still. But not all stillness is strength. Some stillness is collapse. Some stillness is the nervous system giving up. And when that happens, you're not choosing silence. You're being pulled out of yourself by fear. Freezing is not the absence of reaction. It's the fragmentation of presence. It's the moment your energy leaves the room, even if your body stays. You're there, but not really. You're hearing everything, but not listening. You're breathing, but you're not alive in that breath. And slowly, without a sound, your frequency begins to fracture. It feels like you're in control because you didn't yell, because you didn't cry, because you didn't break. But what if that very control is the mask of an internal disconnection? What if in that moment your soul wasn't safe enough to stay? The most dangerous thing about freezing is that it looks like composure, but underneath there's a war being lost. Neuroscience doesn't see fear as an emotion. It sees fear as a state, a frequency of survival. And when you're in survival, your brain narrows, your heart shuts, your field shrinks. You stop accessing the parts of yourself that can imagine, create, heal, and love. You become a closed system, locked in defense, locked in memory, locked in an old story of being powerless. And here's the truth most never realize. What you don't express doesn't disappear. It embeds. It codes itself into your frequency, into the way you walk into a room, into the way you speak to yourself, into the way you dream or stop dreaming. Every time you freeze and don't return, a part of you learns to stay gone. A part of you adapts to absence. And absence has a vibration. It attracts relationships where your voice doesn't matter, situations where your truth is ignored, realities where your energy is always in the background, watching life happen instead of shaping it. Freezing may have protected you once, but if it becomes your pattern, it stops protecting and starts imprisoning. Because what you do not feel fully, you do not release. And what you do not release, you continue to live. Words wound. But it's not the words alone, it's what they touch inside you. It's the emotion that was already there, the bruise beneath the surface. That's why some insults barely touch you, while others silence your soul. Because some words find a door, a memory, a scar that never fully closed. The real pain doesn't come from what they said, it comes from what you felt when they said it. And that feeling didn't begin in that moment. It began long before. Maybe in childhood, when you were too small to understand rejection. Maybe in a past relationship where your silence was survival. Maybe in 1,000 quiet moments where your emotions weren't safe to be seen. And so you try to respond, you try to explain, to reason, to defend. But you can't argue with a wound. You can't heal what was encoded emotionally through the mind alone. You're trying to use logic to close a wound that never bled in words. That's why no explanation feels enough. Why your chest still aches even after the conversation ends. Because your frequency, not your intellect, was what got hurt. And frequency is not healed by debate, it's healed by truth, by feeling, by integration. Most people don't realize they're fighting ghosts, responding to the present with emotions shaped by a past they haven't made peace with. So when someone says something that cuts deep, it's not just them. It's every voice you never answered, every emotion you swallowed, every version of you that stayed silent because you didn't know how to stay whole. Trying to resolve this through conversation alone is like trying to fix a dream by changing your pillow. The source is deeper. It's holographic, not linear. It's vibrational, not rational. Until you allow yourself to feel the pain as energy, not as story, you will keep returning to that same loop. Different faces, different voices, but the same emotional architecture and the same silence inside you, echoing with the question you've never dared to ask. Why did this hurt so much? And where in me did it begin? There is a silence that doesn't heal, a silence that doesn't protect, a silence that instead of being peace becomes imprisonment. And it's in that silence, between what was said and what you couldn't say back, that your body begins to speak for you. It speaks in weight, in tension, in disconnection, in fatigue that no rest can solve. Because silence has a voice. And when you're not allowed to use yours, your body finds a way to scream without sound. When you freeze, your body doesn't forget. It remembers through tight shoulders, locked jaws, trembling hands, shallow breaths. It carries what your mouth was too afraid to say. Because trauma doesn't always live in memory, sometimes it lives in posture, in habit, in what becomes so normal that you stop noticing you're shrinking. You believe you've moved on. But your nervous system hasn't. It's still in that room, still in that moment, still frozen, waiting for safety that never came. And every time a similar situation arises, your body returns. Not because it wants to, but because it was never allowed to leave. This is why the healing isn't mental, it's vibrational, somatic, energetic, because the trauma wasn't just an experience, it was an interruption in your frequency, a break in the natural rhythm of your expression, a fracture in your ability to be fully you, even under pressure. That frozen response becomes your baseline. You begin to expect the world to be dangerous. You anticipate the attack before it comes. And that expectation becomes a magnet, pulling towards you the very dynamics that mirror your inner fragmentation. Stillness, when rooted in fear, is not presence, it's absence. And absence vibrates. It communicates. It draws in situations that match the silence you're holding inside. You may have thought that not reacting was strength, but strength is not absence of response. Strength is staying in your body, in your truth, in your vibration, even when it trembles. It's not freezing, it's remaining. It's choosing not to disappear from yourself again. Because every time you freeze and abandon your own energy, the universe reads it as permission to keep sending you lessons in the same language of pain. When your energy is interrupted by an attack, verbal, emotional, subtle, or violent, it leaves a residue, a weight in the field. You can feel it even hours later. That tightness in the chest, the mental replay of what was said, the invisible loop you can't seem to step out of. Your body might have left the room, but your vibration stayed behind, entangled in the words that entered too deeply. To shift that, truly shift it, you don't need to convince anyone of your worth. You don't need to explain yourself to those who won't hear. What you need is to come back to yourself, to your field, to your center, because that's where your frequency lives, and your frequency is your compass back to coherence. The first step is breath, but not any breath. It's a conscious, slow, grounding breath that touches the bottom of your being. When you breathe like this, you activate your vagus nerve, gently telling your body, you are safe now. This safety isn't coming from the outside. It's you giving yourself the very refuge you lost in that moment. Your nervous system listens and begins to thaw. The second step is a declaration, quiet but powerful, a sentence that reminds your energy of its identity. Not the version that was hurt, but the one that remembers its origin. Something like, this pain is not my home. My frequency is sovereign. Speak it inwardly. Speak it with presence. Let it vibrate through the parts of you that went silent. You're not convincing yourself. You're reintegrating what was momentarily lost. The third step is vision, not to escape, but to reprogram. Close your eyes and revisit the scene, not to relive it, but to reclaim it. See yourself there again. But this time, don't freeze. See your energy remaining, your breath steady, your field whole, not reacting, but rooted. Calm, not because you disconnected, but because you chose to stay. This isn't fantasy, it's recalibration. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between what happened and what is vividly reimagined. As Karl Pribram taught, your brain isn't storing history, it's projecting holograms. So change the hologram, not to rewrite the past, but to reshape the frequency through which you now walk into the future. It's not about winning the argument. It's not about saying the perfect thing. It's about not losing your essence in moments of chaos. Because your essence is the only thing you truly carry forward, imagine a temple of crystal, still, radiant, transparent, not fragile, but pure. The winds howl outside, the sky roars, voices rise, yet inside, the structure doesn't shatter, because it was never built to fight the storm. It was built to remain itself through the storm. You are this temple. Your frequency, when coherent, doesn't need to defend. It doesn't argue. It doesn't explain itself to noise. It becomes presence, and presence has weight. Presence has a field. Presence speaks before your mouth even opens. This is not about being invincible. It's about being intact, even when everything around you invites you to break. In spiritual language, they might call it holding your center. But in energetic reality, it's much deeper. It's maintaining a field of information so consistent, so grounded, that incoherence can't penetrate it. This is the path of the invisible warrior, not the one who battles for dominance, but the one who refuses to fragment. When someone attacks you with words, when energy is thrown your way, your instinct may be to rise up or to shut down. But there's a third path, a quieter one, a subtler one, the path of remaining rooted, remaining luminous, remaining vibrationally whole. Because it's not what they say that defines you, it's what your field does with it. A frequency in alignment doesn't need defense. It transfigures, it transmutes, it dissolves the violence without absorbing it. And when it does, it teaches the world how to meet it, not through power, but through resonance. This isn't poetic idealism, it's energetic architecture. The way the heart radiates electromagnetic coherence. the way the nervous system emits safety when anchored in the now, the way the soul remembers that it was never here to prove anything, only to embody. The warrior you're becoming doesn't wear armor. They wear clarity. They don't strike. They don't flee. They simply remain. And in remaining, they transform the very air around them. Because your silence, when rooted in presence, becomes prayer. And your presence, when aligned with truth, becomes protection. Your body is not your enemy. It doesn't betray you when it freezes. It remembers. It protects. It holds patterns shaped not just by your life, but by generations before you. What you call overreaction might be a survival code passed down through your cells. What you call weakness might be a system doing exactly what it was trained to do when faced with danger: disappear to survive. Dr. Bruce Lipton reminds us, biology responds to belief. Not just the beliefs you think, but the ones your nervous system absorbed before you had words. If your environment taught your body that expression is dangerous, that visibility leads to pain, that staying silent keeps you safe, then freezing wasn't failure, it was adaptation. But adaptation is not destiny. You can change the signal, you can rewrite the program. Your genes are not in control, your environment is. And the most powerful environment your cells respond to is the one you create within. Your inner state is the chemistry your body drinks from. If that state is fear, your cells contract. If it's coherence, your cells awaken. You don't heal by forcing a reaction. You heal by giving your body a new story to believe in, a new field to rest inside. Greg Braden speaks of the unified field, not as an idea, but as a mirror, a living intelligence that reflects not your words, but your vibration. If your field says, "I disappear when hurt," the universe sends you situations to match that signal, not as punishment, as confirmation, not to trap you, but to invite you to see yourself more clearly. So when you freeze, don't shame yourself. Witness, hold, shift. Ask gently, what part of me didn't feel safe to stay present just now? And then choose to stay, even if it's just for one more breath, one more beat, one more moment of coherence. You are not here to perform confidence. You are here to embody truth, and truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes truth just remains, grounded, whole, unshaken. Because what you tolerate in silence today becomes the architecture of the life you build tomorrow, and the frequency you reclaim now becomes the language your future finally understands. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It waits, quietly, inside the pauses, inside the muscles that won't release, inside the breath you hold without noticing. And over time, that silence becomes a rhythm, a code, a message to the universe that says, "I'm not safe to exist fully." But you were never meant to shrink to fit someone's broken tone. You were never designed to vanish just because the world didn't know how to hold your sensitivity. Your sensitivity is not your weakness. It's your instrument, your antenna. It tells you where energy shifts, where something isn't true, where your soul is being asked to either abandon itself again or finally stay. You don't need to yell. You don't need to harden. But you do need to remain in the body, in the heart, in the now, because presence is protection and coherence is power. You don't freeze because you are weak. You freeze because somewhere along the path your nervous system made a sacred decision: I'd rather disappear than break. But now you're no longer at the mercy of that choice. You can honor it and still choose differently. You can breathe into the freeze. You can give it space. You can hold it without running from it. Because in the holding, it begins to melt, and as it melts, something ancient wakes up inside you, a knowing, a rhythm, a pulse that was never truly lost. Let this be the moment where you stop blaming yourself for your silence and begin remembering your field. Let this be the breath where your presence returns, not louder, not sharper, just clearer, just whole, because your vibration matters more than your words. And every time you stay present with your own truth, the world around you begins to change, not because you forced it, not because you fought it, but because you finally remembered who you are when you no longer leave yourself behind.